it for real, for me. Please, say Vivi, hasta la Vivi. Looking pretty, we need it now, baby. Kill me, like Yariri, kill me now. Who beat it on her knees? She say now we it for real, for me. Please, say la Vivi, hasta la Vivi. Looking pretty, we need it now, baby. Kill me, like Yariri, kill me now. Who beat it on her knees? She say now we now.
Sandy.
I feel like for it. Fine girls from my bed, escalate to fly like a bed. Must oil in my head. When the ladies see me, then it work. We know we fly like this. We know we fresh like this. We know no secure like it.
It's fine. I'm done, man. So what else do I do? I hope we're gonna next Gloria. I'm here. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I didn't come with my card. Then maybe.
I hope I can move my neck and not strain your wiring. Yeah. Aha, thank you. Okay. Yeah, all right. Mic check. Did it? Mic check. All right.
Okay. Hello. Hello. Okay. Can you hear me? All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 82nd edition of the Power Dialogue. Please, I want to crave your indulgence. Please, if we could just move forward. We're about it. Please, let's just fill up the seats. Welcome once again to the 82nd edition of the Power Dialogue, titled Vision 30-30-30, Assessing Finance for the Next Phase. My name is Emmanuel Oniche, a policy research analyst with the Electricity Hub. And today we'll be looking at some of the trajectory of energy access growth in Nigerian sector. To date, we could all agree that Nigeria has had challenges with energy access, and to close this gap, the government came up with the initiative through the National Renewable Energy and Efficiency Policy, the Vision 30-30, to attain 30 gigawatts of power from an energy mix with 30% renewable energy by 2030. As much as this looked like an ambitious vision, but the fact is that it's still attainable. But one thing we need to, we can all agree on is that finance is very important in achieving this particular initiative. So in this dialogue, we'll be looking at some of the components, prospects, opportunities, limitations of the Vision 30-30, especially with the incoming government. And if they are to serve for the next 2 tenure, it's something we are all hopeful to see. So anchoring this section is a dynamic professional with extensive experience in the renewable energy industry. She is currently serving as the head of marketing and business development of GVE Projects Limited, a leading renewable energy company based in Nigeria with a cumulative installed capacity of 5.1 megawatts. She has played a pivotal role in the company's growth and success. With a deep understanding of the sector, Abigail has been involved in various projects, including mini-grid development and residential, commercial, and industrial solar installations. Prior to joining GVE Projects Limited, she held the position of head of business development and strategy in the construction for TTL Group and oil and gas Inter-Access Energy Services, where she showcased her strategy, acumen, and expertise in driving business growth. She has also provided valuable consulting services to fintech and asset management startups, demonstrating her ability to navigate emerging market challenges and drive innovation in sustainable business practices. Her passion for sustainable development has been a guiding principle throughout her career, leading her to advocate for business strategies that meet present needs and safeguard and enhance natural resources for future generation. Please, with a round hand of applause, let's make welcome the moderator for this section, Abigail Brocha. Welcome, her.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and we are glad to have each and every one of you here. Welcome to another amazing edition of the Power Dialogue. And on this stage, the panelists that would be sharing this stage with me are as follows: Mr. Ayo Ademilua, and just to bring you up to speed on his achievements. Mr. Ayo Ademilua is the president of the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, REAN, and the chief executive officer of A4&T. He holds a master's in business administration with a specialization in finance and a Bachelor of Science in accounting from Ondo State University. He has over years of experience in the finance industry and has worked in different banks in Nigeria before leaving Guarantee Trust Bank to pursue his entrepreneurial endeavor. He has astute business analysis skills and strong leadership intuition. He acquired the requisite skills for the renewable energy business through training and conferences locally and internationally. He is a member of the Sustainable Committee of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, consulting on matters relating to renewable energy generation and low carbon emissions. Ladies and gentlemen, join me as I welcome Ayo Ademilua. Also, to be sharing the stage with us is Engineer Eji Okeke. Eji Okeke is the Managing Director of Azura Power West Africa Limited, the owner and operator of Nigeria's first and only successful project finance facility, the 461 megawatt Azura Edo IPP. A seasoned director and manager with 25 years of experience in heavy capital intensive industries, Eji started his career with Guinness Breweries in 1995. As a management trainee in its engineering division. He then joined Schlumberger in 1996 as a field engineer in its drilling and measurements division. During his stay at Schlumberger, he also had assignments in such diverse countries as Nigeria, the USA, the UK, Vietnam, and Pakistan. Until he joined Azura in 2014, Eji was the power generation product sales manager for Sub-Saharan Africa in GE's power and water business. After previously holding the West Africa region manager position for GE Energy, prior to GE, Eji has also worked with Lafarge Cement, where he served as the strategy manager for the South African operations, as well as the commercial director for Nigeria WAPCO unit. He holds an MBA from the Imperial College London and a B engineering in electronic engineering from the University of Nigeria in Nsukka. He is also the non-executive director of Fidelity Bank PLC, a member of the board of trustees of the Association of Power Generation Companies, and a member of the strategic advisory board of the Coal City University of Enugu. Ladies and gentlemen, make welcome Mr. Eji Okeke. All right, and also Engineer Abubakar Ali Dabshima. Engineer Abubakar Ali Dabshima has a bachelor's degree in electrical and electronics engineering from the University of Maiduguri, Borno State, Nigeria, and is a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, a fellow of the Nigerian Institution of Power Engineers. He joined the Federal Ministry of Power as a principal electrical engineer in 2002 and also served in the Electrical Inspectorate Services Department from 2002 to 2013. He was in charge of inspection, testing, and certification of rural electrification projects and the 1133, 132, 330 kV substations and transmission line projects, Japanese grants in aid, rural electrification projects in Nasarawa, Borno, Bauchi, Gombe, Cross River, and Akwa Ibom states in Nigeria. Engineer Adi Abubakar is the Director of Renewable and Rural Power Access Department, supervised many projects in Nigeria, and currently the Director of the 3,050 megawatt Mambila and 40 megawatt Kashimbila hydropower plants. He is the focal person for ECOWAS Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, and the International Solar Alliance, Green Hydrogen, Nigerian Energy Transition Plan, Secretariat on Sustainable Energy for All Activities, National Annual Reporting on Implementation of NREP, NEP, and SE for All Action Agenda. He participated in the Interministerial Committee that developed Nigeria's Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Policy, documents Sustainable Energy for All Action Agenda on the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. Recently, he just concluded the digitalization of the Nigerian power sector for least cost electrification planning and market intelligence by the use of the SE for All Central Data Management Systems tool. The final version 3.1 is to be launched in January, or has been launched in January 2023, currently representing Nigeria as a member of the ongoing G20 Energy Transition Technical Working Group under Indian presidency. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Engineer Adi Abubakar. All right. So, without much ado, we would be getting to the nitty-gritty of why we are here to discuss the Vision 3030, accessing finance for the next phase. Before we commence this discussion, I would like to implore members of the audience to please put on their phones on silent so that we do not have any distractions as the conversation is going on. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Okay, so we will be commencing these discussions, and to do so, we have some major objectives we intend to achieve by, going on this discussion. And basically, we intend to highlight the trajectory of energy access growth in Nigeria's power sector to date. We also intend to talk about some of the components, the prospects and the opportunities and limitations that affect the Vision 30-30-30 post the 2023 elections. And we also intend to highlight government's role in how these plays out. So to kick off this conversation, I would like to pose my first question to Engineer Edu Okeke. Can you kindly give us a brief overview of the energy access roadmap to date?
Thank you very much. It's going to be a tricky answer when you say what's the roadmap, where are we today? Well, first of all, what's the roadmap? The plan is that by 2030, Nigeria should be generating 30 gigawatts of electricity, and that 30% of that electricity should come from renewable sources. That's a very noble objective. Where are we today? It's very difficult to say, simply because while REA is doing quite a lot in terms of renewable, we are still, from the time we started thinking of the plan to the time we launched the plan, the plan for the grid, we are still talking about 4,000 megawatts. And the challenge I have, which I pose to policymakers and regulators at all times, is we think of energy access, what of the underserved? Because it's not about electrifying the whole country, to say we've achieved 100% energy access. If my disco gives me electricity for 2 hours of the day, do you count me as having enough energy, that I need or not? So it's a very tricky one, and that's why for somebody like me, I normally don't go with all these good, it's very easy. Vision this, roadmap 2030. We have to go back to the basics first of all, and that is having a grid. Because today, do we have a stable grid? The answer is no. We have to have a grid in the first instance. We have to have stable electricity, making sure that we serve those who are actually connected to that grid. And then we take stock and say, what can we do? And the good thing is that the country is well blessed. We have quite a lot of hydro, which is part of renewable energy. Let's understand it. We have quite a lot of hydro sources. We have electricity, we have sun all over for renewable, for solar. So achieving that target of 30% is not such a big deal, but it's having a robust strategy on how to attract finance to develop our energy need, to energy source need. That's the key thing. The reality is that besides government, what government has done in terms of the farm fast track that they did, the hydros that government just did, Azura is the only power plant that has come online in the last 10 years. And if you actually think of it, if you take away the privatization, Azura is the only power plant. So we should be asking ourselves, what are we doing wrong? Considering that energy access is still very low, full energy to people is still very low because a lot of people in Nigeria are actually underserved. Why is it that finance is not rushing into Nigeria to actually act, to incentivize and enable those power plants to be built? I think that's the question we should be asking. We shouldn't just focus on vision, the roadmap of 2030. We should just think of ourselves and say, why is there no investment coming into the power sector? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that honest input. Now, hinging on what you said, I would like to direct the next question to Engineer Abubakar. Can you also give us a brief overview of the Vision 30-30-30 targets?
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Actually, the Vision 30-30-30 is one of the policy directive government. And when you look back before 2015, 2016, Nigeria doesn't have renewable energy and energy efficiency policy. So we sat down with then our superiors. We now look inwards and also with some of our development partners, how and to come with a policy that actually would put us in a pedestal that at least we should have a target where we want to go and achieve a particular target. Then in 2016, we now assess the whole power sector and all the potentials, both hydro, wind, solar, gas, even up to nuclear that is expected to come on board. Then we came with that vision and we came with a template under the Sustainable Energy for All Action Agenda, the United Nations goal number 7, energy access. We came with all those data and information and we came with the policy and we have a chart, which is Vision 30-30 chart, that from that 2014 up to 2030, we now mark and now identify potentials. Each and every year, what are we going to add capacity to actually, meet the grid supply and also for those underserved and unserved communities. And on that, every potential, if it were a PowerPoint presentation, I would have done that. You can see this is the Vision 30-30 chart, which from that vision, we now spell out all the potentials and each and every component of it every year as a guide. What can we actually deliver, considering private sector participation, government participation, and some other individuals. So all those things were captured, and now we came with a vision that by the year 2030, we are going to achieve 30 gigawatts with 30% share of renewable. And from the government side, that is when impetus was given to also Zingeru, also the Kashibila 40 megawatt hydro, and also to concession the 30 megawatts Gurara hydro power plant, which has been, lying fallow for the past 7 to 8 years. And also we came with the mini grid regulation, whereby at a certain voltage level, or you want to supply anything below 100 kilowatts, you just get a permit. You now go within the DISCO franchise area with them and now get that aspect done. Anything from 100 kilowatt and above, you get a permit from NAC, and also you develop such infrastructure. So, and the ministry also came with a program, solar in public buildings, using the available potential that is there. We now consider that, okay, all these public buildings that, they hardly get access of electricity to actually, operate government businesses. Now, we now came with about 5 different government agencies that we want to build a capacity of solar to at least relieve the grid and also to reduce the burden of government spending on, electricity bills, which is like the powerhouse building now. Just a few days back, we just get the approval to build 1 megawatt solar on the powerhouse building at the Maitama, that is the TCN building, and also 1 megawatt at the Federal Ministry of Finance building after carrying an energy efficient audit to determine actually what they can get actually to deliver services of government. And also the National Defense at Kaduna, we are going to build 2 megawatts of solar. National Naval Base in One, another 2 megawatts, and Teaching Hospital Damaturu. These are intervention, and also the energizing education program of the REA. It was actually baby of the Federal Ministry of Power. Later on, because of the role of REA, those projects were transferred to them with the funding for them actually to deliver that. And when you see the REA program, they are doing a lot of, providing access to underserved and unserved community up to agricultural, farming implements. After that, again, we now came for us to achieve Division 3030. We came with the Central Data Management System, where we now identify through GIZ, our development partners, which I am also co-chairing together with the head program of GIZ. Now we map the country into clusters and identify the potentials, including the population, business hubs, agricultural activities, so that we can now map those areas for, investors, to have easy glance and where they can actually come and invest in renewable energy. With government, bringing that program out, and that central data management, which was just launched at the ministry level, so that at the end of your computer terminal, once you access the site is available. Nigerian.se4.gov.ng. When you Google, you will now access any of this. We have mapped about 27 states out of the 36 states of the Federation, and work is still on progress. So once you enter the website, you Google, you will now know what potential is there, and that will give you an insight whether you are going to do a mini grid, solar home systems, or decentralized mini grid, that would, considering communities that are close to the grid or far away from the grid, or communities that even in the next 20 years that electricity cannot reach them, for easy electrification planning. So it's one of the tools we develop. So these are the drivers we now look at, will give us the vision 3030. It's a vision. It's not that, yes, cast on stone that you must reach that 3030, but as a country, you must have a plan and a vision where you want to go, so that private investors will key in. Government funding also can be channeled to relevant areas where these targets can be met. And the essence is to reach electricity to the unserved and underserved. So there are a lot of mini grid projects we develop outside, the school that are far away from the grid, which presently, as I'm talking to you, they've been paying electricity, some up to 200 kilowatts, 200 naira per kilowatt hour. And the communities are very happy. Those projects are running for over 2 years now. Because if you consider the cost of running to the cities to buy diesel, maintenance of generator, when you interview them, they will tell you that, yes, they are very happy with these mini grid solutions that we provided. And all this are in track, and we are encouraging investors to come and partner with government through, giving tax holidays and some other incentives, with duty waiver and the rest, so that at least government cannot do it alone. Definitely private sector must come in to partner with government to achieve that. So these are some of the things major we put in place in the ministry, and also as Renewable Energy Department is our mandate, and we oversee the activity of REA. So we work close in hand with REA, with some of our development partners, to actually achieve that. Thank you very much.
Oh, wonderful. That was quite a robust overview, if you agree. So moving, on, after having laid the framework of how government has the strategy with year-on-year deliverables and action points as to Vision 30-30-30, Mr. Ayo, can you highlight the requirements necessary to drive energy access?
and harmonized data. The country as a whole needs to have validated, and I repeat the word validated, not just data. We need to have validated and we need to have harmonized data on the current energy access statistics of the country. So we all generally have a kind of figures and percentages that we have from previous studies, which says that we've got 45% of our population currently as off-grid. And I like what Mr. Engineer Okeke was saying about not just being off-grid, but people that are underserved. By global standard, you receive 4 or less than 4 hours per daily. You're seeing internationally that you're off-grid. So most of the places and cities that we just think that are on-grid or are served, or even calling underserved, are totally like kind of off-grid. So we need validated and harmonized data, identifying the total off-grid, identifying the total underserved, and identifying the one we could say they're really served to tell us where we are. Then we need attractive policies. Kudos to Dr. Abubakar and his team. They've done fantastically well from the NREEP 2015-2016 to the mini-grid framework by NEC and some other framework that we have. But we need to, when you're talking about energy access, most of the countries that have achieved it, they found it difficult to achieve it because you can't achieve it by yourself alone. You need to have investors come in and invest. And there's only one thing that drives investors: the outlook of your policies and your framework. In Nigeria today, we boast of having the best mini-grid framework in Africa. And that's why we've been able to have some investment that, Dr. Abubakar's ministry have been able to get in through RA and the others, because the framework is the attraction for the developers. We have countries in Africa today that we've had colleagues as developers that have gone to develop, and they're out of the place because the government just strolls into the mini-grid regime side and gives and instructs a particular tariff. Regardless of what the cost of your capex is, regardless of where you're coming from, and you find out that already you have invested, now they're giving you a particular tariff that cannot recoup your fund. So, but in Nigeria, we have cost reflective through the MITO. So we need to create more of such attractive policies and framework. Then we need to create a standardized reporting and monitoring platform and framework to harmonize the progress that we're making from time to time. So we'll go Vision 30-30-30 from 2015-2016. Okay, where are we now? We need to have, the desk that will tell us that from the time we had this vision, this is where we are now. The total gigawatt, like Engineer Okeke was saying, is 4,000. People used to kind of argue this with me internationally when we're talking, but it is what it is. It is 4,000. And every time I remember that it's 4,000, it's also very disheartening. I found out, I think about 2 or 3 months ago, that Egypt has about 60 to 70 gigawatts. And the total population of Egypt is 110 million. So here we are at 200 million. We have 4. So the huge gap is there. So we need to, even as we're making our baby steps, we need to know what we have achieved. Okay, today we're at 4. What is the percentage of renewable in our 4? What is the percentage of, fossil fuel? So we move on. Then I said that we need to have finance. That's one. There's nothing we can do about it. And I remember I was on a panel early this year, and somebody was asking me the question that what is the government's plan on the transmission backbone infrastructure? And for me, I believe that is one of the major issues that we're having in Nigeria, because our major trunkway, which is the transmission grid, has a limit to the capacity of what Engineer Okeke can upload. Even if he increases his capacity to generate, It can't really upload more than it can upload on that grid. So we need to have finance pumped into the backbone. That is our broadband. That is our expressway of moving the power. So we need to find a way to pump money into it. Then we need to ensure that we have fiscal policies, incentives that can attract foreign capital. We're building the framework in terms of framework that makes it landing. But what's the fiscal policy saying? Interest rate is 18% right now. I don't know what it is if you're going to be able to fund projects from Nigerian system within both the banking system and the capital market, what the cost of fund is like. How profitable will that land when you're running your business model? So we need to provide affordable financing that has the right language. And when I say right language for financing in energy, you need to be talking about the cost of fund and talking about the tenor of that fund that can match the kind of projection and development you want to do. We need to run capacity building. If we want to have 30 gigawatt, do we have enough engineers for 30 gigawatt? And it is not only engineers. You know, in the value chain of energy, I mean, I speak as a developer. We have grids now, thanks to what the government is doing with power towns, you know, under our grids and everything. And it opens our eyes to see that it's an entire value chain. How many people do we have in the legal industry that are energy savvy? How many people do we have in finance that understands, you know, power business model? How many do we have in human resources? So as we're thinking about the backbone on infrastructure and thinking about everything, for our energy access, we need to develop capacity across all the value chain. It's important to try to look at our curriculum in the universities and work with that our vision. So, doctor, there's a lot of more work so that we can break down those work for that vision to touch everywhere that needs to be touched. It's quite amazing. As I was coming, I was thinking about it, that energy transition plan is 2060. We're just about how many years now?
37.
Vision 30 is 7 years. The kind of run rate that we need to put in from 4 to 5 gigawatts right now to get to 30, it's about 25 divided by 7. So we need to be adding annually nothing less than about 3 to 4 gigawatts. The total capacity of renewable energy we have in Nigeria today is not up to 1 gigawatt. No, it's not. So, if we don't have 1 gigawatt and we need to have 9 gigawatts in 7 years, we need to speed up running at least an average of 2 gigawatts starting from next year. The energy transition plan has helped us in distilling it down to finances required for $110 billion over the next years to 2060, an average of $10 billion above usual spending. And if we attack it with the kind of drive the energy transition plan is bringing, we will be able to achieve the policies that Dr. Abubakar and the team have put together. So, outside the capacity building, outside the investment in those backbone, I believe that I'll stop at that for now so that we can move on. But those are the things I think we need to add.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. That was quite insightful. I mean, putting into perspective the fact that finance drives infrastructure development, this is also known in other spheres, so tying it down to energy is not a new thing. Moving to Engineer Eji Okeke, what are some of the opportunities and limitations of Vision 30 post the 2023 elections?
Again, I like where we've come. We've done the analysis. We've gathered the data. So the way I look at it is that it doesn't really matter whether post 2023, and if the government is a continuing. The key thing is that government has gathered that data, so we know what we need to do. The question, so yeah, in terms of the opportunity, I mean, is basically that the new government that is going to take over next week, they are not going to start afresh because they know what needs to be done. The limitation is basically, why is it that nothing has happened since that plan came about? And that's the thing, because I mean, I like Engineer Abubakar when he was talking, but one of the things that kept coming to me is typical Nigeria, the way we think. We are going to do 1 megawatt at Federal Ministry of Finance. You know, typically in any country, government's job is divided into 3: policy, process, and project. Normally, for optimum performance, you should be doing it about 30% each. So you focus 30% of the effort should be on policies, 30% should be on processes, and then 30% on projects. And what do you think of projects? Projects that will catalyze private sector investment. Let me use an example. AKK, the Ajaokuta Kano Katsina gas line. Typically, private sector might not do that project because it's not going to be economical to them. So government can now say, okay, we are going to do this project to incentivize investment in Katsina. That's project. But the unfortunate thing is that Nigerian government even thinks that private sector can do, because, again, I don't want to point hands, but if you, most often you don't make money from processes and policies. You only make money when you do a project, you procure. That's the only time. And that's why almost every time it's about who procure this. The reality is that nobody needs to tell Abuja Disco. If things are normal, nobody needs to tell Abuja Disco that Federal Ministry of Finance, that this is the energy requirement for that building. And nobody needs to tell Abuja Disco that if we do the analysis, power from the grid is also this is the cost of power from the grid. If I do solar power there, it's going to be cheaper. And even whoever is managing that building will look at all those things, do the cost-benefit analysis and say, it's going to be cheaper for me to do this. You know, that kind of thing. Government doesn't need to do every project. That's the long and short story of where I'm coming from. Like maybe hydropower, you can say they can do. But the question that every policymaker in Nigeria should be asking is, how come that with this data, with this need that Nigeria should be doing about 30 gigawatts of electricity by 2030, we don't have a lot of investors scrambling to do those projects? We have to go back to the policy. It's all about policy. That means that our policy is wrong. You know, most of the time, people talk about finance. There is financing in this world. The only thing is that finance goes to places where it is accepted. Every investor wants to make money. You know, there are ways of doing it. I put it in my bank account, I check the interest I'm being paid, or I invest here. People would like to invest in Nigeria. I remember that 2012 to 2013, NBET had quite a lot of investors, developers were all over Nigeria trying to do. There are so many IPPs that we are under plan then. Why did they all disappear? Don't ask ourselves that question. It's simply because of the policies we bring about. Every investor wants to make money, and it's not charity. That's another thing we have to understand. You know, most of the time we keep assuming, you know, we see our presidents jumping from one country to the other. I want to go and attract investors to Nigeria. No, you don't need to go anywhere to attract any investor. If you put the right policies, the investors will find you. That's the way it works. You don't need to go and ask anybody. Look at what we've done in the last few years. All of a sudden, you bring money into Nigeria, you can't take it out. And you think an investor is going to come bring his money. The reality is that if you bring $1 million based on what is happening, the day that money enters your account in Nigeria, you lost about 40% of it. Which investor is going to bring that money in? So those are the policies that rather than focusing on those, we keep going about to projects. We have to do this project, we have to do that project. The limitation that we've had is simply government policies in the last number of years. If we can tidy up those policies, let's understand that we had a very robust plan. As at the time I was in GE, I had about 60 projects I was tracking in Nigeria alone. Of those projects, only Azura closed. And, you know, whenever we talk about it in the office, we say, we are so lucky, because if we hadn't gotten to financial close in 2015, 2016, Azura will have one of the dead projects we have in Nigeria today. That's the reality. Because every investor disappeared. Why? Because our policies just went back inwards. It's all about government doing. And we always also kind of have the assumption that government will do it cheaper. Government will never do it cheaper. That's the reality. So there is financing. And even if the financing is expensive today, it's going to get cheaper. Every investor has an option to refinance. If today you borrow at 30% and think things are getting normal, a bank is going to come tomorrow and say, wow, in Nigeria, they give loans at 30%, while in US, they give them at 4%. What do you think they're going to do? I am ready to come and give them at 20% in Nigeria. That's the very first thing they will say. They will jump in, and you that you financed initially at 30%, you're going to refinance at 20%. And then all of a sudden, somebody else who is giving it at 8% somewhere say, in Nigeria, you can get 20%. I can do it at 15%. That's how it works. But unfortunately, we as policymakers, we always think we want to get it right the first day. I believe that the biggest challenge we've had, and why the key limitation, is government policies. If the incoming administration can reduce those limitations, achieving Vision 2030 will be is not a big deal. That's where I look at it. Now, I mean, China adds close to about 30 gigawatts every year. You know, Nigeria can do it, and Nigeria, we have all it takes to do it. It's simply our policymakers understand what needs to be done. I mean, why talking about this? I'm going to go back to something that just happened. You know, in the press in the last few weeks, everybody have been talking about the new constitution that was signed, where states can now generate and transmit electricity. But so for me as a player in the sector, I shake my head every time I hear it. We cannot even move today when we have only one regulator. Think of what we have when we have 37 regulators in Nigeria. That's where we are going to, because we have not defined what the federal NERC is going to be doing and what states will be regulating. What you're going to see now is that everybody's going to be bringing policies, and what will happen? Investors are going to disappear. I will still go back to what I said earlier. There is money. Financing is never a problem. If you have attractive project, you get financing for it. Azura, one of our investors, has directly about $30 billion under management, and indirectly about $300 billion. So if we want to expand our capacity 10 times, we can find that money today. It simply, does the government put the right policies in place for us to bring in that money? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful. I mean, putting into perspective the fact that Nigeria has the market. The Global Competitive Index a while back placed Nigeria as one of the topmost markets as the pillars of development. So moving to Engineer Abubakar, hinging on what Mr. Eju has said, can you discuss some of the components and prospects of the Vision 30-30-30?
Thank you very much. The last speaker, Mr. Edu, has spoken. I want to take from the middle speaker, that is Mr. Ayo. Yeah, he has rightly said it. In the power sector and the value chain in the power sector, for professional level, people have to get the in-depth knowledge of the power sector and also the economics of the power sector. Is key across the board. Whether you are a legal practitioner, you are economist, you are engineer, that language, the legal aspect, and also the economic aspect is a key that we must build capacity. In that aspect, actually, the capacity is not as is expected. That's why you see most time a lot of people, they talk like they are expert in power sector. Everybody claims to be an expert in the power sector. That's why you see the power sector has so many challenges. People that don't know actually the rudimentary of how this power sector operates and how the engineering aspect and the economic aspect get in alignment. People just come and claim and all over the place. So these are the kind of interference that used to happen even within some of these government agencies. They deem to take over the work of actually the prime parts of the sector supposed to do. And at the same time, just Mr. Engineer Idu KK mentioned, you see, when you talk of investment in the power sector, the technology is there everywhere in the world. The money is there. But actually, as he said, the investors are looking for, how do I recoup my investment? Return on investment. You can't come and invest where there are some issues that you cannot be able to either repatriate or invest and now see the outcome of the investment. So these are another challenges. And you mentioned the component and prospect of the Vision 3030. When we want to achieve this Vision 3030, first and foremost, we have to consider energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is key. Whatever you are doing, it has to be highly energy efficient so that you utilize the little energy you have in the maximal way. And also government, not that government is interested in doing projects all over, as Mr. Okeke, Engineer Okeke rightly mentioned. Some of these projects we are doing is to test the policy that we are coming up with. And at the time, the government doesn't run those projects. We concession them to private investors. After putting that money, we concession to them, they run as a private and even expand on what we install. When we say 1 megawatt, Ministry of Finance can take more than 1 megawatt, but we carry an energy, or maybe a vital section of that particular organization will be on that. We build, testing the policy, and then we concession to private individuals that have the capacity and with a mandate that they can expand on that, and we can build capacity and they can employ people to run those facilities. And the other component of Vision 3030, government doesn't, think of saying that, yes, we wanted to invest. We need the private sector to partner under, a peaceful and I can say a guided regulation. When you consider now, we have the Jigawa Energy City, where we want to build 1,000 megawatt of solar in that hub, which the state government has given the CFO for the land. And now we are partner with African Development Bank, which we carry, we have done the feasibility studies, bankability of the project, but now we want to review that feasibility studies so that we can now reduce, cost of investment in development of such facility by now carrying out, review the studies, give the layout for the infrastructure, for the road, for the water, fencing, so that we can now advertise for individuals, investors to come and invest, whereby if they come, they are not going to think of doing the initial studies they're supposed to do, getting the infrastructure there for water, roads, and fencing the place. So these are one of the cardinal objectives government is looking at to test the Vision 3030 so that we to achieve the Vision 3030. And also we have now embarked, or I can say we have studied a lot of small and hydro dams across the country, especially along Mombila and Taraba axis. There is a lot of potential, which we have carried detailed studies, and we want investors to come, even it means partnering with government, so that we can develop such infrastructure and build an island mini grids around, communities that are far away from the grid. Can you imagine, as I am talking to you now, there are about 3 local governments in Taraba State, they are not connected to the grid at all. They are even far away from the grid. And there is a lot of potential there. So we are trying to harness such kind of, such kind of potentials that are there, so that government will put. We are now trying to develop one around that area to build 40 megawatts and also with 30 megawatts solar to hybridize. Once that is done, we want to concession. That's the way we concession Zungeru, Kashimbila, and the rest. And these are low-hanging fruits, because the potential is that you need not to build a big reservoir. It's just as a catchment of a mountain enclave. You just do your damming and then put your turbine before you know, and it's just 70 kilometers to existing 132 kV line. So that one will also, we want to use that aspect to achieve the Vision 3030. And Nigeria has a lot of gas potential. We are a gas country. Yes. And for us to get our base load, definitely is gas now, we are going to achieve a base load that we can drive industrialization in this country. That's why, as you mentioned, the AKK going right up to Kano, Kaduna, Kano, is to do that. And when you consider the Nigerian energy transition plan is in that direction, and also the net zero 2060 also are in that direction to maximally enhance the potential of the gas we are having to generate electricity. And also the policy of green hydrogen too is also coming within the African sub-region. We just passed the green hydrogen policy within the region, which is going to be presented to the 15 ECOWAS sort of state. Once that one is done, each country now will take that policy and begin to think how we are going to, use hydrogen for, our local consumption and export. And you can produce hydrogen from gas, from nuclear, from renewable energy. That one is open to the whole world now. It's not necessarily green hydrogen that you say you have to do through renewable energy. Green hydrogen can be produced through, gas and other, low carbon emission, potentials. So these are the areas we are thinking to harness actually the Vision 2030, and would emphasis on mini-grid and off-grid solutions of renewable energy that that is available in the areas that this project has to be deployed. So these are the areas government is talking and also looking at, but private investors is key for national development. Government cannot do it alone. We know, we are on that. And the incoming administration, definitely, if they come, we are government policy makers. These are the areas we want to dwell on, so that we engage more of private to get more private capital to come in, so that we can, achieve those targets we are talking, especially the energy transition plan of government, which 10 billion naira is needed every year to achieve that for the period.
Thank you, thank you. Glad to know that government's preliminary steps put in place are indicative of some of the steps to show that this has to be a success. So thank you so much. I will let you catch your breath, and I will come to Mr. Ayo and get back to you. Mr. Ayo, if you could, just help us in, analyzing some of the roles of finance in achieving the Vision 30-30-30.
Well, I think we all know that finance is bedrock for us to achieve this Vision 30-30-30. Like I broke it down the other time, we have only 7 years now. The time we had this vision crafted, we had 15 years. The plan was that we're going to grow at about 2 gigawatts per annum to get here, but now we have only 7. So there is a need to sit down and plan attractive policies that can unlock the kind of funding that Engineer Okeke was talking about. The truth is, I'm one of the people that have always believed that funding is available. That's just the truth. In terms of energy around the world, if you're a player, you know that funding is available. So let's first of all cancel thinking, oh, there's no funding. No, that's not true. So the fundings are available there, but for them to gravitate towards your country, there's a need for you to position some policies and frameworks that will bring them in. You must also find a way to do policies that will allow repatriation, because you can't bring in funds that you can't take out. So if we're able to find policies that will do that, it will help us. Then we also need to sit down to harmonize. I like the feasibility studies that Engineer Abubakar spoke about. We need to know how much we really need. So it is not just like an hearsay and we say, okay, we want to do 30 gigawatts. How much do we really need? So if we know, okay, we need $100 billion, then we can begin to go for it. Then I ask a question, excuse me, that we have some anchor banks like the Central Bank of Nigeria, like the Bank of Industry, like DBN, the Development Bank of Nigeria, we need to find a way to catalyze and activate them to do the things that their mandate says they should be doing. Because we can't just be thinking and talking about foreign investment. The truth is that there's also money in this country. I hope we all know that we have funds in this country. And no matter what it is, yes, we have a quantum percentage of the investment that we want to do in the power sector that has to be FX based, US dollar based. At the same time, we have some quantum that could be local Naira based. So as we're trying to roll the policies out, we must do things that would help CBN, help BOI, help DBN to do the things that they're supposed to do. It will also be disastrous for us to say we want to do the journey of this 30 gigawatts. And we set out to ensure that everything that we want to use is imported. It will make no sense. So we need to sit down and say that, okay, we want to run the journey of this 30 gigawatts. How do we unlock manufacturing of some stuffs in this country along this our journey? So that the gains of the derivatives of this movement can be felt, in ancillary industries and other ways. Sure. So if we're going towards 30 gigawatt by 2030, what are the materials, what are the equipment that we can focus on to start manufacturing in Nigeria? Don't say tomorrow. Okay, say 2 years' time. Say 3 years' time. Okay, we're going to import from year 1 out of the 7 to year 3. But by year 4, we're going to have the technology and the capacity and the knowledge in Nigeria, and we're going to be doing it from Nigeria. I'm sure that nearly all of us here know that Nigeria has lithium. What is stopping us? And of course, Mr. Additional helped us last week to say that producing lithium batteries in Nigeria is far cheaper than producing in China. And I know that from Engineer Abubakar's team and ministry, they can use policy to drive the Haitians, the Europeans to come set up producing here, so that we don't need shipping in of those lithium batteries. The same thing we can look at cables. All of us know that Nigerian cables are one of the strongest and highest quality. Why don't we scale it? We're going to be using cables. You just spoke about 70 kilometers. It takes about $10,000 per kilometer to extend a grid. Multiply 10,000 by 7, that's $700,000. Just one line. If you're running on 3 phases, you know what that means. So why don't we, you have to find a way to look at your vision and plan active backward integration from beginning. Yeah, I'm going to do this in 7 years, but in the next 3 years, I'm going to rely on imported knowledge, imported equipment. But by the 4th year, I'm going to start running some capacity within my country that will give all these things to me across the value chain. You're talking about poles, you're talking about cables, you're talking about hydros, you're talking about all those equipment. The countries that have them, they started one day. Yeah. Now we are the ones that need them. So we're the ones that have to produce them. So equipment manufacturing, equipment procurement, we have to find a way to backward integrate. We need to identify and distill to the sectors where we actually need its fund. There has been some, I call it aberration, so pardon my opinion, in the skewness of technical assistance percentage in funds to actual funds that goes to projects. So if we plan $100 billion for project of 4 or 5 years, I see sometimes 30 or 40% of fees, they say it's technical assistance. And this technical assistance ends up with consultants, with hotels, with flights, and other stuffs. 70% of this technical assistance, if reinvested back into projects, will move us some more distance. Yeah. So we need to find a way to redesign programs and projects and funds that we're bringing in or attracting to be able to provide or produce actual results instead of just having a lot of backload consultants. I don't want to take work from consultants, but unfortunately, I'm the president of the Renewable Energy Association. I need to speak some of those truths. So we need to find a way to rework. So finance is also needed for us to be able to speed up now. Don't forget that the FX, movements, volatilities, all the risk and all the stuff that are happening in the world, you can't predict it. Inflation around the world, some of the happenings, you can't predict it. So the earlier you're able to attract your funding, the better for you. Engineer Okeke was talking about the potential that Azura has. How do we do policies? How do we activate frameworks that can make them to scale? Where we are right now, anything less than scale is not acceptable. I was excited at the 1 gigawatt here, that engineer Abubakar spoke about in creating in a particular place. And in my brain, I was like, that's great. They're able to do that 1 gigawatt, 2 gigawatts in a year makes a lot of sense. So, but when we do 400 megawatts, we do 200 megawatt, we do 300 megawatts, and we do only 3 of them in a year, we're still nowhere. But trust me, just like we said, it's possible. If you want to deliver 5 gigawatts of solar in a year, we all know it's possible. If you want to deliver across the hydros that they've done developmental works for feasibilities on 4 gigawatts, 5 gigawatts, yes, it's possible. But the more we're moving in generation, we must also be moving on the line of our backbone, which is our transmission grid. It won't make any sense. We'll continue to generate what we cannot upload on the transmission grid. Now, also on the distribution part of it, we have to come up with policies that will enable the decentralized distribution. Great works done by NEC, by the Ministry of Power, towards decentralized licensing, decentralized permitting. We need to continue to have that because there is need for a lot of fresh funds into the distribution network. If we don't have those funds coming, we will still be stranded. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I know as much as I've been asking all the questions, members of the audience are also itching to have some of their thoughts and questions heard. And at this point, I would want a microphone to be passed on to the members of the audience so we take a question or two, and then we also look at rounding up. So do we have any questions on the floor? Okay. Okay. We have a gentleman in front here. You can start by introducing yourself, your organization, and your question, and who you're targeting your question to.
I'm Samuel Akinyele Colcrick, a retired aviator, the former rector of Nigerian College of Aviation Technology. Sorry. I wrote a book, Power in Nigeria, Will There Ever Be Light? I don't know if anybody has seen it. I sent it to you anyway. And I've been following this dialogue. I'll not be able to come to Abuja because I'm based in Lagos. As a retired man, I couldn't be moving around. Anyway, in my book, I started a narrative. I think we should start with, what do I need the power for? What do I use power for? We're in the tropics. 70% of power is required for cooling and refrigeration. 70% in tropics. In the temperate countries, you have about 24%, about 59% for heating. But they have a variety of mix for their heating. They could use coal, they could use wood, they could chop woods, they could do everything. So they don't put everything on the grid. But because cooling and refrigeration needs electricity, so we tend to put everything on the grid. That answers why OKK is telling us that we don't have a stable grid. It cannot be stable when the demand ratio is higher than the supply. I think we have the highest deficit demand supply ratio in the world. I think so. So how do we do it? How do we get out of this 4,000 he's been talking about? How do we break that ceiling? It's been like that for the past 15 years, if I remember. Ceiling 4,000, we can't go beyond that. So I think we should start, sir. doctor, we have to start from there. We need, what do people need power for? What we have, can we be able to supply this way? I suggest in my book, I said the first thing I would do is to disconnect the heavy users, factories from the grid. Take them out. Take them out. What we have should be able to give power to the households and the small scale industries. Luckily for us, our architecture, the small scale industries around the residential areas. So you don't need any other wiring. Get them out. The tariff is even more competitive than the industrial one. Take them out. Now, how do we now subsidize the industry? The industry that, look, I'm paying most of the consumption from households, and they use PMS to generate electricity. Subsidized already. I will use that savings to fund while we build up the grid. Because the grid as it is now cannot go, if it's not stable, it cannot. We have system collapses every time. That is because we have disturbances of the grid. And what is disturbing the grid is compressors of the heavy, every appliances that have an inrush current anytime we put them. I don't want to take other people's time.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, please do.
I have to come in because I totally disagree with what you've just said. I just look at it that you're going opposite what should happen. Rather than saying we should disconnect the factories, actually we should be disconnecting households. So let's understand the situation. Let me finish, please. When you think of, let me start in terms of power generation. You start with gas. You to develop your gas field and build a gas pipeline, you need an anchor tenant who is going to pay your fees cost. That's why they go for a power plant. Let's assume your processing facility is about 400 million SCOF. You need an anchor tenant like an Azura that will be taking 100 million SCOF a day. That assures you that your fees cost is covered. Then you can now start selling to the small guys. If you look at the tariff today, the biggest challenge with the power sector in Nigeria is that those that pay, which are the factories, are not connected to the grid. The grid has been so inefficient to them that they've all disconnected. And let's also understand that when you think of power, it's actually the bedrock of everything that is wrong with Nigeria. That's how I will state it. I mean, there was a time I was discussing with Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. I said, you can blame the Central Bank for so many things, but power is where it starts. Because there is no stable power, you manufacture in this country at about 20 to 30% premium to what you manufacture in every other country, because it's inefficient for you to generate your own power. Think of it, you have 4 flats in a building. The cheapest way for you to have electricity in that building is for you to have 1 generator serving everyone. But what do we have? We have 4 generators. Those 4 generators, if you come to your flat, the guy is going to look at all your ACs. You don't use all your ACs at the same time. So he's going to look at your peak power. When he looks at your peak power, he actually sizes your house and your generator based on your maximum load. But at any particular point in time when you start, that's why in so many countries, you have base load power plants, then you have what we call the peaking plants. Peaking plants is when you are starting a heavy load and you draw a lot of power. They come on just to cover and then it stabilizes. So, because we are so inefficient, we manufacture about 20-30% premium. And that's why when you add the import and the transport cost, it's cheaper for me to import anything into this country than manufacture it locally. And because now import is cheaper, it doesn't matter what government says anytime. Buy Nigerian, do this. Me and you, we love Nigeria. We're all patriots. But it's about love myself first. It's about my pocket. If I enter ShopRite, and what is manufactured in India is 50 naira, manufactured in Nigeria is 60 naira, I will buy what is manufactured in India. What makes people to buy locally is that local product should be cheaper. But in Nigeria, because of power premium, local product is not cheaper. So we keep importing, and what does it? Our balance of trade goes the other way. And that's why our currency is falling down, because at every particular point in time, we are importing more than we are exporting. Our currency will be depreciating. So sorry, I don't agree. We should actually, in fact, I keep saying it every time. Why should my mom, who is in the village in Anambra State, who is retired, my mom is almost 90, she's not productive. If you ask me, I'll give her solar home system, because what she needs is simply to be able to see. And also maybe when it's very hot, bring one small fan to cool her. I don't need to spend that money extending the grid. If I am TCN, 40% of my investment will go to Lagos and Ogun axis, where the power load is heaviest, not to that my mom who is in village. So yeah, I know you talked about 3 local government areas in Taraba State. All things being equal, if I'm TCN, I will look at those 3 local government areas. It's really economical for me to connect grid to them, or is it better for me to give them solar home systems that they can be using? That's the reality. So if you do the basic economics, we should actually disconnect households and connect the manufacturing facilities that are paying for the power.
All right. Thank you, sir. Sorry, sir. Just before we, move on to you, we have a panelist that we intend to let go because he has some engagements to attend to. So if anyone has a question to be directed at Engineer Dapshima, this will be a time to do so. Please. Okay.
Yeah, good evening, everyone, and good evening to the esteemed panelists.
Good evening.
This is a very interesting conversation, and Engineer KK, thumbs up for the last response, because statistically speaking, if you check the books of the discourse as it stands today, the industrial and commercial guys are the ones sustaining them in the business. If they are not there, the business is dead on arrival. However, a lot has been said already. Policies need to be put in place, incremental steps need to happen and all of that. But my own question is this, sir. We have talked so much about policies. Everybody now knows that there need to be enabling policies to drive, both from commercial angle, financial angle, environmental, and governance. My question is, I think the government is actually missing out on taking proper action. What I mean by that is this. If policies are the issues, set up a committee or set up a council, identify the issues and address it. You can set up a council that cuts across the respective business interests, private sector, the financing, development space, government, and all of that. So my question to you, sir, is this. What exactly is stopping government from taking proper action? Since 2015, that this 30-30 conversation came up, and between then and now, we have not added one gigawatt. So, and we have lost, say, 8 years. So what exactly is stopping government from taking actual action on addressing the issues? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I disagree with you saying that since 2014 we have not added 1 gigawatt. You see, Mr. President, just day before yesterday, he commissioned 40 megawatt Kashimbila hydropower plant, which is one of the targets to achieve the Vision 3030. And at the same time, there is a project at Lower Usman Dam, 1.2 megawatt solar, which through our Japanese, intervention and collaboration, we built that 1.2 megawatt solar power plant that is powering the water treatment plant in Lower Usman Dam, giving water to Abuja. And on that, because of that water treatment plant, FCT is saving not less than 50 million naira every month, minus cost of maintenance and fueling of generators that they do before. So, and when you look at the mini grid regulation, the mini grid regulation has brought about, building a lot of mini grid across the country. Even the ministry, private individuals, now with the, disco collaboration, as they now franchise some areas, you go to now, like the Kaduna Disco now. There's M1, which is a franchise of certain areas under this mini grid regulation. They are now providing electricity. And also when you look at the vision, the the feeder improvement program of the federal government under the Renewable Energy Department. That is, we call it 3D 24/7 feeder enhancement program, which we identify a feeder that is Maribon about 300 kilometers. We now provided we decentralize that feeder. We decarbonize one of these 14 solar IPPs, KVK, which has the license to generate 50 megawatts. We now had understanding with Kaduna Disco. Now they are now building a 5 megawatt solar plant to feed into that particular feeder. Along that feeder, we have the teaching hospital, Sokoto, university, airport, and a lot of filling stations along that area, which in the next 2-3 months, we are going to commission that. And we brought all the IoT meters, about 2,000 of those, highly, premium customers, we metered them so that there won't be, energy loss for the decentralization and also for collection and, technical losses. All those ones were contained. So when you see policies, is this policy that make impetus or birth to that particular project, the 3D 24/7? I believe a lot of people are not aware of it because the publicity is low. By the time we commission, and discourse will now take advantage of that particular feeder, or I can say pilot program, to implement across all over the country. And once you want to generate now, it's very easy. You go to NAC with collaboration with the distribution companies. A lot of them are ready to get partners so that they franchise some of these their disco areas so that you develop. Like the Yola Electricity Distribution Company that was just, taken over by private individuals from government. They are now decentralizing the whole of Borno State to individuals where they can build solar, inject into that to decentralize, to be off from the grid. So these are all outcome of good government policies. And when you look at the eligible customer regulation, where industries can now, build, and also with TCN, whether to use the CCN network or to build their own network, to now, get power to dedicated areas, whether it is estate or individual, there are private organizations. All these things are outcome of these policies. Policy driving is not, is something that has to be taken step by step. It's not just one time you see the impact. That's why at that time I mentioned that we are now installing 1 megawatt in government buildings, at least so that government, the money that they spend on diesel and also paying, electricity to the discos, that can be saved for another purpose for the government, establishment to run for. And at the same time, when you look at the energy transition plan, the energy transition plan is a pathway where we want to harness the resources of gas we have in this country so that we can have a base load. Thank for Engineer Okeke. He has mentioned about base load and picking plants here. So we need a base load. We don't have enough power to stabilize those industries. That's why you see there are a lot of system collapse in the system, just the way he narrated. When they need, the system will collapse and all this. So these are some of the measures government is taking place. And there is a lot of interference into the power sector, as I mentioned earlier. And I believe when this government comes, is going to curtail that interference that is not necessary from some other elements that are, actually bringing, problem to the system. So these are the things we've been looking at. And with these policies I mentioned, we are moving forward. And also that makes our development partners also to have confidence in us. If you see the way the Rural Electrification Agency now is being, the loans I can say they got from the African Development and the World Bank, trying to energize the university, energizing agriculture, all these ones as a result of these policies that are in place. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Engineer Dapshima.
Sorry, Abigail.
Yeah.
Again, when you are in this kind of forum, it's always good to also clarify things. I like your question. How come we haven't moved? It doesn't matter what Engineer Abubakar says here, we haven't moved. That's the reality, And why haven't we moved? I would say it's overregulation. If you actually ask me, like I said, vision is nice, But the regulator should actually get out of the way for things to happen. Unfortunately, we haven't moved because at every particular point in time, one civil servant is staying somewhere thinking that he knows better than the market. We had a very good plan for this country, which is very simple. We privatized all the entities. We know that the discos were not bankable. So what did we do? We said, okay, we are going to create an entity called Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC to shield generation and transmission so that we focus on distribution. It was a very simple policy. We said, we went around to investors, we raised 350 million euro to be able to use to shield the generation company so that we keep building more capacity. If we had stayed with that policy, by now Nigeria will be talking about 15 to 20,000 megawatts of electricity. But only Azura closed. We returned the 350 million euros. Government now feels, no, we should be the one doing the whole thing. Since then, no other person is building a power plant in Nigeria, and nobody will be built based on the current policy. We say we have eligible customer. What is eligible customer? The biggest custodian of the customer is the disco. You take them out of the policy, you say you have an eligible customer. That's modeling the whole thing. When you have scarce commodity in every society, you don't regulate, you auction. That's why if you have spectrum for GSM, what do we do? Do we regulate? We auction. That's why MTN paid more than $200 million to get our spectrum because it's scarce. So when you have scarce commodity, you auction. And what it means is that Abuja disco, you don't have enough electricity for Abuja for people that are within your disco area. What do? You allow those who are willing to pay so that you can pay down up the value chain and generate more electricity so that the cost will be coming down. That's exactly what happened in telecom sector. But for some reason, in the power sector, we have too many civil servants running around trying to think that they're fixing the problem, thereby causing more problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ejiro. And at this point, Mr. Engineer Abubakar would like to let you go. Thank you so much for being part of our panel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. All right. For the audience, we have, the opportunity for one more question, and we would be rounding up this session. So, any more questions in the room? I have a hand at the back of the room.
Good evening. My name is Abdullahi Umar. I'm a director at 117 Capital Limited. I happen to be one of the partners to a hydropower, Hydropolis. Now what they've done is that they've secured some land and a free zone around Kainji Dam, because it so happens that about 50% of the power generated from Kainji doesn't go through our transmission lines, so it's stuck there. So they've created a free zone, and they're trying to pull factories to that location where power can be much cheaper for access on production, which Mr. Okeke rightfully mentioned. Now, the idea is interesting because we have a lot of power generating plants around the country, but then our problem is transmission. So how do we push more of the factories closer to where generation is happening so that transmission lines are shorter, you service them, and borrowing from what Engineer Okeke said, give people in residential areas solar solutions because they don't need that much power. So I think if we can get government visit the power architecture, where exactly do they want to play? What do we even have right now in terms of generation, distribution, transmission? And how do we become efficient in application and utilization? With that, it makes it easier for private sector to play and know that we can make our money from this angle. Makes it easier for financiers to generate money, tap in the market, raise bonds, raise sukuks to support funding of power because it's profitable in those spaces within the market. So I think for me, it's more of a contribution to the conversation. And I was hoping that the gentlemen we have from the public sector would have still been around, so that hopefully they would revisit this conversation and see how they can support it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that insightful contribution. And at this point, we would be rounding up the conversation, but to do so and in closing remarks, as you round up, I would start with Engineer Edry Okeke. In putting together your closing statements, can you also, in addition to that, discuss and, align out the role of the private sector in ensuring that finance structures are in place to increase the energy access post the 2023 elections?
The role of private sector, is definitely the public sector that needs to put structure. Now, the role of private sector is to check the public sector. By the action of the private sector, the public sector can tell itself, I am doing the right thing, I'm doing the wrong thing. That's the principal thing that the private sector brings. We at Azura, we raised about $890 million in 2015 to build the power plants because the policy in place at that time encouraged that we could raise that financing. Ever since then, policy had changed and no money is coming in. So what the private sector normally does at any particular point in time is to act as a check on the public sector to tell them your policy is right. If more people are building power plants in Nigeria today, the public sector team will be saying, yes, we are doing a good job. But if nobody is building a power plant, that means that they should be asking themselves. Like I said, there is financing, but money goes to where it's needed. It's not, it's something I keep telling everyone, there is no investor that is a charitable entity. I think it was in the news yesterday and 2 days ago about the Dangote refinery, how he started with Rivers State. They chased him away from Rivers State. He tried Ogun State. But Fashola met him and attracted him to Lagos. That's how private sector works. So it's just like what the gentleman said. Yep, if there is stranded power there, let's understand why is it that if I can get stable power near Kainji, why am I not placing my factory near Kainji? There are other things in play. For any manufacturing facility, it has to look at energy is one of the costs. But the key one is also raw material and access to market. And whether you like it or not in Nigeria today, the biggest part of the biggest market is Lagos Ogun access. That's why every factory is going to that side. That's the reality. So there are so many things. Energy is not part of it. Like I said before, as government, there are three things they do. One is policy, second is process, third one is project. So what government should be doing, if you want, government can now channel policy. For example, if you site your factory near Kainji, we can say tax waiver for 5 years. All of a sudden, myself as an investor start crunching the numbers and saying it makes sense that actually because of this tax waiver for 5 years, I might have to go there. That's where the government comes in, for the government to come and build anything at all. You understand? So whatever private sector does anytime in financing, again, I'll go back to it, is simply being a check on the public sector to say your policy is doing well or not. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Edry. Thank you. And then over to you, Mr. Ayo. In your closing statements, can you also speak to how government and the private sector can synergize in ensuring these financial structures are in place to increase energy access?
I found out that over time, we're not really clinical about monitoring and reporting. We set up policies. We don't set out timelines to check them quarterly. You know, we do it in our private organizations. We hold quarterly, but here in Nigeria, for one thing or the other, we set the vision and the people never see us every quarter to say, this is how far we've gone. So there's a need for us to keep watching, like what Engineer Okeke said, the private is the mirror for what you have done as a policy. But the truth about it is that you can only see what the mirror is telling you when you take time to look at the mirror. So if there's no stipulated quarterly, biannually, when you come back together and say, okay, how are we faring? then you'll not be able to know how really well you're doing. The fundings are there, but we need to deliberately be coming back. Then we need to do a lot of more action. Let's talk. We gather a lot to do a lot of talks and write those things on paper. Vision, can we action it? That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. So, to close this panel discussion, we would just like to round up with some recommendations. It's obvious we all agree on the fact that government needs to do more in terms of picking up the pace to drive this vision 30-30-30. And also while at that, it has to be ensured that policy streamlining is done to avoid over-regulation. And an enabling environment also needs to be put in place to attract funding. I mean, it's been said, there is funding, all right? But how do you ensure it's being put to this energy drive that we want Nigeria to enjoy? And lastly, also, we've spoken about how to maximize mini-grids in unserved communities as opposed to having to drive the grid to that location. And lastly, to avoid the cost of extending lines to rural areas with low paying power. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for being part of this edition of the Power Dialogue. Thank you very much to the organizers and also to my esteemed panelists. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for sitting in tight to the end of this, to the end of its second Power Dialogue. Thank you, Abigail Boscha. Thank you, Mr. Ayo. Thank you, Engineer Edu. Okay. We appreciate the great insight you've shared with us on this topic. Thank you to our participants, to you all. Big thank you to you all for coming. To people from NetEmbed, NEMSA, Energy Pro, RIEN, NESP, and many other organizations that are here represented. A big applause to yourselves. Okay, the Electricity Hub, please follow us on social media at the Electricity Hub, NG Electricity Hub, on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and stay up to date with all our programs. We are open for adverts, sponsorships, and partnerships. You can reach out to us through any of our social media platforms, or you could talk to any of the Electricity Hub staffs you see here. We're also open for feedback on how you would like us to make the Power Dialogue better, because the Power Dialogue keeps getting better, and we want your feedback as well. So there's feedback form that will be sent to your emails, and we'll really appreciate your very genuine feedbacks on it. We look forward to seeing the next dialogue, and wish you all a very safe trip to your various destinations. Thank you.